Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, Energized by Celsius. It is a Tuesday edition of the show, and it is a wild one because there was so much that went on during Cut Day, which just ended at 4 o'clock, right around when this show started. The Bucs had trades. The Bucs had surprising cuts. The Bucs had even more surprising cuts on top of that. We're going to get into all of that in today's episode. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is Scott Reynolds, also PewterReport.com, who broke some news today. Scott, how you doing? Is your head spinning? Because I know mine is just a little bit. I'm just getting ready for this show.
This has been a wild roster cutdown day. There's no doubt about it. It's been action-packed, and it hasn't really let up, man. It's been a fun couple of hours. I thought we saw some of these moves coming, like, for example, keeping the 7 wide receivers.
Yeah,
I even had that on my final 53 roster projection. But then when I heard Todd Bowles say that trio of younger players didn't really step up, in my mind, I'm thinking that they cut Scotty Miller. So I don't know how you get to 7, especially because I thought that Brashard Perriman was also cut. So the number was right, but the players that they ended up keeping and then the ones they cut, in my mind, that was something that threw me for a loop and surprised a lot of people. We were talking about the fate of Scotty Miller yesterday. I mean, we were carving his tombstone and chiseling it, right? Here lies Scotty Miller, he of the famous catch in the NFC Championship game. But I mean, he's not dead yet. He's not dead yet. Scotty Miller lives on. It must be because he's a Celsius guy.
Yeah, of course. If you're a fan of Celsius, you got to be happy about today because Scotty Miller is on this team. And of course, Scotty Miller sponsored by Celsius, as is the Pewter Report podcast. And guys, we love Celsius for so many different reasons, starting off with the variety of flavors. You got the sparkling grapefruit. You got the sparkling grape rush. Sorry, 2 different grapes going on there. You got the sparkling watermelon. So many different flavors. The orange as well. Love the tropical vibes. The Arctic vibe tastes just like a slushie, and you can't go wrong with the tropical vibe or the peach vibe either. They also have 7 essential vitamins, so it gives you that essential fuel to get you through your day, whether it's a work day, whether you're about to have a workout, whether you're monitoring roster cut day, which is very busy as well. There's so many great things about Celsius. Make sure you go to their store locator on their website, find out where there's a Celsius near you, or order in bulk off of Amazon. I would recommend the variety pack because, once again, I'll keep hammering it home. Variety is the spice of life. So you can get all of those different flavors, set it up every 2-3 weeks, whatever you want, order it on Amazon. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius because they are the title sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. Celsius, live fit. And yeah, Scott, so Scotty Miller, as you said, we were pretty much ready to write him off. I mean, it wasn't just on this podcast we were talking about it. We are lucky enough to do multiple different radio hits and things like that, especially on WDAE, where I was talking about that as well, that I think Scotty just didn't necessarily prove himself in the preseason. And we talked about that a lot on yesterday's show. So I recommend to everyone watching or listening to this, check out yesterday's show if you haven't watched it yet. But I have to believe that Scotty's on this team because I think we know with this roster, the Fantastic Four, they're going to get the majority of the playing time at wide receiver. So for Scotty, I think he's on this team, one, because he does still have that deep threat, and we know he has that. But he's got to be involved in special teams one way or another. So I think the thing for me that was so confusing about it is why wasn't he getting as many of these reps at gunner like throughout the preseason? And we know that he lines up in practice. He'll line up at kick return, but he never kick returns in the game or anything like that. So why necessarily did he make this team unless he's going to play gunner? I think that has to be the case for Scotty Miller.
He's one of those guys that he lines up all the time as a punt return guy and fields punts in practice, but has never really gotten that opportunity during the games. It's a little puzzling. I think too, when you look at this roster, and there's a big reason right there. Les Evans, Brady's little buddy Scotty. Yes. This is Tom Brady's likely his last year in Tampa Bay, possibly in the NFL. This is not the time to try to break in some new young wide receivers. And I think this team has invested some time in Jalen Darden, and they like how he's progressed this offseason and during training camp. He has looked better. We're not trying to blow smoke here or justify the team's decision to keep him. I don't think, Matt, we've said a discouraging word about Jalen Darden in the whole month of August, have we? I think our commentary on Darden has been good because he has performed well. He has gotten open. He hasn't gotten yelled at for running the wrong routes or cutting his route short. He's caught the ball. He looks a little bit more fearless returning kicks and punts. I think that he's turned a corner. So having said that, you're not going to stock this team for Tom Brady with too many young guys. This is the young guy they have chosen to saddle their horse to right now. Now, I will say this. If you've read pewterreport.com, and I'll grab the story here and put it up on in the chat. We broke the story, not just we'll get to Logan Ryan in a minute, but the Bucs will be keeping 7 wide receivers. The Bucs roster cuts, I don't think have actually been announced yet. Tampa Bay is notoriously tardy for announcing their cuts, not at 4. They usually do it like around 5 or so. But the 7 wide receivers, of course, the Fantastic Four: Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones, and Russell Gage. They parted ways with Tyler Johnson. That was a bit of a surprise. They kept Scotty Miller. That was also a bit of a surprise. Brashard Perriman is a player we'll talk about in a second, but Jalen Darden is the guy that I believe is going to get the first crack at returning punts for sure, and maybe kicks. Or Rashad White might take those duties as well. I thought he did an adequate job in the preseason. But as it pertains to Scotty Miller, this is a player that Tom Brady does trust. He does have some speed. He's healthy now. And Matt, there were days, and we documented this, where he really showed up in training camp. He had some very good catches, very good days in practice. And he just has more experience than a Deven Thompkins, who I thought was equally as impressive. But when you look at Thompkins, he's probably going to go on the practice squad, right? And Thompkins, I think, will end up making the active roster at some point this season. Like we saw Cyril Grayson come up, right? Mm-hmm. And we've seen the team add receivers during the season. It would not surprise me at all if before the first game you see Deven Thompkins added to the 53 and maybe Brashard Perriman go on the practice squad. So again, this is the final 53 for today.
Right. There's still 2 weeks until the season.
Exactly. So there's going to be some other moves made. They're going to acquire some players, maybe off the waiver wire, maybe via trade, whatever. This is not the final set in stone roster. So I think that Brashard Perriman may not be on the 53-man roster when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys game. He might be on the practice squad by then. We'll see. A lot depends. You could have an injury in practice, right?
Yeah.
Chris Godwin could have a setback, or he just might not be ready to play. The doctors might not clear him for that Cowboys game. So as it stands right now, I understand there are some people that are really questioning why Brashard Perriman's on this team. And I'll tell you why he made it over Tyler Johnson. Tyler Johnson has had a better preseason. The problem with Tyler Johnson is he's just not as fast as Brashard Perriman and does not have the ability to separate. And quite frankly, he's not as physical. He's a bigger guy, but we saw it last year when they put him in the slot to try to replace Chris Godwin, especially in that Carolina game at Carolina. He did not do a good job blocking in the run game. And they ended up actually replacing him with Cyril Grayson in the slot that game, as well as the Jets game, and also using Brashard Perriman there. And Perriman came alive at the end of the season. He had 5 catches for 44 yards in the season finale before injuring his hamstring and was unable to participate in the playoff game. Mm-hmm. And then he had 2 big catches in the Jets game as well. So they like Perriman because he has the size that Tyler Johnson has, but he's faster and he's got more experience, and he can also play in special teams. That's something that Tyler Johnson did not do. I remember sitting in the press box next to Josh Capo for the Titans game. We're watching Tyler Johnson line up as a gunner on one particular play. And maybe it was the fact that he was just out there on offense and was gassed a little bit, or maybe it was just a loaf. I don't know. But I remember Josh and I both saying to each other, wow, Tyler Johnson looks like he's loafing out there. Like he's just jogging down the field on this punt return. And it was kind of stunning. And so Tyler Johnson, again, is another player that really hadn't found a role on special teams. And I think that ultimately cost him.
That was something that, if you go back to last season, we were talking about, of like whether or not, how can Tyler Johnson make this team if he doesn't play on special teams? And that was something that he didn't really do this season or in this training camp. So I still disagree with, cutting Tyler Johnson. I would have kept him over Brashad Perryman. And I do understand the aspect of he's faster than Tyler Johnson. I think he had like a little bit of guaranteed money, but in my opinion, it wasn't like enough money to be like, oh, like we can't get through our financial system for the rest of the season if we cut Brashad Perryman right now. I know you said he made some catches in the Jets game and that Panthers game. I really think that touchdown against the Bills, the walk-off in overtime, I guess it bought him a lot more time than expected, because Tyler, you can't, first of all, Brashad Perryman wasn't healthy for more than half of this preseason. Tyler Johnson had a great preseason. He had 11 receptions for over 133 yards. So it's not for a lack of play. And while I do disagree with Tyler Johnson getting cut by this team, you can understand the fact that, all right, well, you look at the first 4 wide receivers, they're not going to be playing special teams. So if you're keeping, if you're keeping 6, you're relying on 2 guys that can go and play special teams. But
they're keeping
the Bucs
7
are keeping,
now.
but now the Bucs are keeping 7. So you can afford to have one guy that maybe still isn't a special teams guru. But for Tyler Johnson, I feel like if you have to separate yourself from everyone else, then start playing a little special teams. And he didn't, and that's why he's not on this team right now.
One thing about Scotty Miller too, and Todd Bowles kind of gave us a hint about this. Scotty Miller did not have a good preseason, but he had a good camp. I think that, again, we saw enough catches and performances in practice. It just didn't translate into the games. He had very little opportunities. He did get open, as Josh Capo from Pewter Report pointed out.
Yes.
After the Dolphins game, he was open the most of any of the receivers. That's part of it. But you got to catch the ball when you're throwing the ball. He had 2 big drops from Blaine Gabbert, one against the Titans game and one against the Colts game. But I appreciate that, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
I appreciate the hair comment. I think Tom is the reason. I think. Listen, Tom Brady does have some say so in which receivers he throws to. Like, there's no doubt about it. Going back to Scotty Miller, though, the fact, Matt, that Deven Thompkins, Jarrett Stearns, and Kalen Geiger didn't do anything really in either of those last 2 games to pull ahead of Scotty Miller, right? To really, have 3 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown, whatever. The fact that didn't happen, I thought, kept Scotty in the race. Ultimately, looking now in hindsight of why they made that decision, I think that had one of those receivers done that, then maybe it's a different story. I put up there about from Common Sense, no way Tompkins. We appreciate the super chat, Jeff, and the compliment about my hair. It goes a long way. I really appreciate that a lot. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you $4.99 back just for that. I'm going to send you the $4.99 just for that compliment. That's awesome. No way Tompkins is on the practice squad. Here's the thing: the only thing that the teams have to look at, they don't get to watch practice film. So the only practice film that anyone has seen outside of the Buccaneers is when the Dolphins were in town and then when the Bucs went to Tennessee. So if the Titans liked him from practice, and he did have some good performances there against both teams, those would be the 2 teams that might be after Deven Thompkins. But then you got to put him on the active roster. He is going to return to the practice squad because he didn't do much in terms of production-wise in the preseason. The other thing is, he's small. He's the smallest out of all the receivers. He's even smaller than Jalen Darden.
Yeah.
I think the kid can play, but he didn't go out there and light it up in the preseason. He didn't have a Skylar Thompson type preseason where you're just like Emo. Yeah. Where this kid just kind of comes out of nowhere to lead the league in passing. He didn't do that. He didn't lead the team in receiving. So I don't know that there's enough film out there to justify putting him on your active roster for another team, unless maybe the Dolphins or the Titans just saw this kid and just said, wow. But even then, it wasn't like he was the best receiver on the field in either Tennessee or here in Tampa when the Dolphins came to town either.
I think he's impressive for an undrafted free agent that if you give him a little more development, the practice squad is perfect for him. I mean, you look around the league, there's only so many players that are undrafted free agents that make a career for themselves in the NFL. Of course, Cam Brate being one of those. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't like he was going to come in and, usurp Russell Gage for the number 3 wide receiver. And sure, his height has a lot to do with that. I really do think he's going to be a prime candidate for one of those guys that they announce will be called up to the active roster on game days. I really do think
I agree.
That could be a possibility.
Matt. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time we get to Dallas, if Brashad Perriman is on the practice squad and then Deven Thompkins is up. See, there's a couple procedural things too that I need to kind of explain. If you're on the active roster and you're a vested veteran, then your salary is guaranteed for the entire season if you're on there for week 1. That's already happened to Brashad Perriman, so he can't claim that again. Okay? You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of sleight of hand salary cap magic happening here, that this is not the final 53. So all those people that are up in arms about Brashad Perriman, I'm not saying he's not going to be on the active roster when the Dallas Cowboys game rolls around, but I'm not saying he's going to be either. This team does like Deven Thompkins. And again, heed my words. Don't be surprised if that is one switch that they make in putting Deven Thompkins up on the active roster, maybe as early as week 1, instead of Brashad Perriman, who might go in the practice squad. Something to keep an eye on early.
And to go back to Tompkins real quick, I don't love Darden as a returner. So I kind of still think, even though the next game is the first regular season game of the season, I don't necessarily know if the Bucs 100% have it figured out who's going to be returning those kicks and punts. Like, it's definitely going to be Darden's going to get the first shake at it. But, if Tompkins, impresses, it's tough to do it in practice because they don't do special teams too much. But if Tompkins is able to, show something as a returner or a gunner, he's going to have a role on this team. Like I said, we all saw the struggles with Darden as a returner last year. So let's not pen or pencil him in to that role right away.
Well, and the thing too is maybe they take one of those off his plate and say, you're going to focus on being a punt returner as opposed to a kick returner. Rachaad White with a 33-yarder, he's not the most dynamic kick returner. I like to have a guy back there with speed and electricity.
Agreed.
And he's more of a long strider. He's got good vision, and you do need that as a return guy. But maybe Rachaad White gets a little bit of a look at kick returner, and they leave Darden on punt returns, where you can focus on that and not have to have playing receiver and playing kick returner and punt returner all, scrambling his eggs upstairs. Ted Curtis with the super chat: does Armstrong or Bowles pick the starting kick and punt return guy? Ultimately, it's Todd Bowles' call. He's certainly going to have some input from Keith Armstrong, the special teams coordinator. Matt, I think if Todd Bowles wants a certain guy as a punter kick returner, he's going to get that wish because he's the head coach, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. At the end of the day, it's his decision. I do think he does lean, as we saw with Bruce Arians, I think we'll see it with Todd Bowles. He obviously values the opinions of the coaching staff around him. So he will listen to Keith Armstrong, and I'm sure Armstrong will give him his recommendation, and he'll take that into consideration. Bowles will end up, deciding on that, whether they both agree or if Bowles likes one person over the other when it comes to Armstrong. I see a couple other people with super chats. We will get to that. A lot of people are feeling some type of way about some of these moves, whether it's cutting Thompkins or keeping Scotty Miller. Some people are throwing shade a little bit, but speaking of shade, Scott, if you wanted a little more shade in your own house to get a little more privacy, I think the best place to do that would be Florida Lanai curtains, would it not?
Matt, you're exactly right. Now, I've already done this, folks. This is not just a script read here. I actually have Florida Lanai curtains installed in my house. It's honestly one of the best investments I've ever made. It's helped the look of my house, and more than anything, it's given me the privacy and the shade that I want and need. I've got the sun beating down on me. I live in Florida, right? I mean, we all live this Florida lifestyle, and that includes warm weather and plenty of sun, and that's great when you want it. But when you don't want it, when you need some shade and you want to cool off, that's where Florida Lanai curtains comes in. The two most common complaints about spending time outside in Florida is the lack of privacy. If you live in a community, if you have a house, you know that homes are being built right on top of each other. Your next door neighbors are closer than ever, sometimes too close for comfort. Then you get the brutal heat of the warmer months. And I swear, summer is like 9 months out of the year here. Lack of
Yeah.
privacy and too much sun, it can drive you indoors and keep you away from your pool and your lanai and those outdoor spaces that you would love to be at more often. That's where Florida Lanai Curtain solves both of these problems with the privacy on demand patented outdoor privacy curtain system and the custom made screen enclosure shade sails. Their flexible installations options and their high quality products give you the privacy and shade where you need them. Privacy on demand outdoor curtains are made from the well-known Sunbrella brand of marine canvas. Means they're heavy duty. They're backed by a 10-year fade-free warranty and available in over 100 colors that are going to match your outdoor space and give you the look that you want. Their unique shade sails are made from the Sola Mesh product, which has got a 10-year warranty against degradation, and they're built to give you shade and UV protection for years to come. If you need privacy or shade and you want more freedom to enjoy your outdoor spaces, do what I did. Visit Florida Lanai Curtains. Their website is lanaiCurtains.com to find out more about their amazing custom products, and you can do your own hassle-free instant online estimate. Now, it's worth the investment, folks. It really is. Call 813-337-2511 or schedule a free in-home consultation by calling that number or going to their website. That's Florida Lanai Curtains at lanaiCurtains.com.
Before we get into the other news that has everyone up in arms today, two more super chats real quick we want to get to. First of all, Callie Bucs, an avid watcher of the show. Thank you so much for the super chat. He says, postseason included, Miller had a total of 84 yards. I don't think that's totally fair to bring up, though, because he was injured for a majority of it and got himself out of the lineup and then, didn't really get an opportunity until late in the season. So I think a fully healthy Scotty Miller, we're looking at a much very different player for this upcoming season. And then Matthew, great name with the $5 super chat. Thank you, Matthew.
Hell of a name.
Yeah, hell of a name. He says, Cole Beasley is a slot guy like Gage. We need with our offensive line problems and better third down guy for Tom Brady than a few guys that we kept and available and cheap. I think the wide receiver room was already stacked going into it. I do think Cole Beasley is still, a solid player in this league and can fit certain offenses. But again, Beasley's not going to take a spot of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones, or Russell Gage. So
Right.
do you really want to bring him in as the fifth wide receiver at best? You kind of already have that with a couple other really speedy players on this team. You have Godwin that can play the slot. You have Russell Gage that's going to play the slot. So I don't totally see Beasley fitting in on this team unless there was like one or two injuries to that position.
Yeah.
I like the suggestion and I appreciate the super chat. I don't necessarily agree with bringing Cole Beasley in.
I agree. And I think the other thing, Matt, to consider is Cole Beasley is a slot receiver in the vein of a Julian Edelman, a Wes Welker for that New England Patriots style offense, right?
Yeah.
And this is a different type of slot receiver that they needed in Tampa. We've kind of talked about this ad nauseum, but it bears repeating when instances like this come up. I appreciate the super chat very much, Matthew. Thank you. But yeah, it's a different. You need a bigger bodied receiver, and that's where Julio Jones, even Russell Gage, who plays bigger than his size, Rashad Perriman has played some slot. So having those bigger type of players that can affect the run game and help out in the block, on the perimeter blocking as well, that's really where it's needed. So if you notice, we had Grant Stuard on the lead picture of today's Pewter Report podcast. The reason why he is there is because the Buccaneers have made some roster moves. In addition to their cuts, we'll get to the cuts in a second, but Grant Stuard, special teams ace, who we did not have making this team, so it's no surprise that he was traded. I'm glad they got something for him because he was not going to make this team over Olakunle Fatukasi, who had a fantastic preseason, leading this team in tackles and also being a factor in special teams. But they traded him and a 7th-round pick in 2023 to the Colts for a 2023 6th-round draft pick. So essentially they moved up into the 6th round, got some draft capital there, not an extra pick per se, but a better pick as a result. So now the Buccaneers have a pick in the 6th round, courtesy of the Colts. What else happened today, Matt?
Well, they put Rashard Robinson, a guy that I was, I wouldn't say rooting for, but a guy that I was saying should make this team. They placed him on injured reserve. If you recall Saturday's game, he did not play in that game. He was wearing a jersey, but not with a helmet and shoulder pads. And it's very likely that he is going to be getting an injury settlement, and therefore he can return after the first 4 games. So those were some of the big transactions that went on. Robinson, again, we talked about it. His arms and legs, it's like he's a stick figure. He's just like he's rail thin to the point that he does get injured a lot. I mean, he was injured at the start of the preseason this year, and he got hurt, or training camp, I should say, and then he got hurt to the point where he couldn't play in the last preseason game when he's fighting to get a job on this team. Like, it wasn't like it was guaranteed or anything like that. So those were the other 2 moves that were not, cut or released.
Right. And here are the roster cuts. Ryan Griffin, Patrick Laird, J.J. Howland. I think Howland ends up on the practice squad. Tyler Johnson, Deven Thompkins. Matt, you think that Thompkins has got a good shot of returning to the practice squad as well? Are we in sync with those 2 players, at least Howland and Thompkins?
Yeah, Justin Timberlake in sync.
Yeah. That's Dylan. I misspelled that, so please demerit me a point for that. Put me in suspension or timeout for misspelling Dylan. It's not Dylan, it's Dylan Cook. Sedarius Hutcherson, John Molchan, and Jose Borregales on the defensive side. Mike Green, Willington Prevalon. It was an honor to cover you in training camp. We wish you well. Perhaps on the practice squad. We shall see. Deidrin Sanat, Benning Potoahi, Andre Anthony. I think Anthony comes back on the practice squad. Elijah Ponder. Jannard Avery, maybe he's a practice squad addition. He got a quick look in Tampa in that preseason game against the Colts. Jordan Young, J.J. Russell, Don Gardner. I think Gardner's got a shot to come back. He was impressive. Kyler McMichael, Chris Cooper, Nolan Turner. Nolan Turner might have a shot at coming back if they like him. Logan Ryan. This was the surprise cut of the day. We knew there was going to be one. If you read SR's Fab 5 on Friday, I told you about this, that having Ryan Jensen on the roster is going to cause a bit of a conundrum, because essentially Jensen is injured. So you're keeping 52 healthy bodies plus Ryan Jensen today. The Bucs could not put him on short-term injured reserve where he would come back after as early as 4 games until tomorrow. If the team would have put him on injured reserve today, he's done for the year, unless they reach an injury settlement, which they might with Rashard Robinson. Mm-hmm. But they're not going to do that because they don't want Ryan Jensen becoming a free agent. They want him on their team. And they want him back this year too. So they had to put him on the roster today. And then tomorrow at 4:00, they can put him on the injured reserve spot. And that will allow him the opportunity to come back after 4 games. It's going to be longer than that. But I think they're shooting for maybe around the bye week or so, November, depending on what that injury actually is and what the diagnosis and prognosis is. And so then they will bring back, I'm guessing, educated guess, Logan Ryan comes back tomorrow as a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, to everyone. And I saw a lot of people on Twitter freaking out. What the hell are you doing? What the hell is wrong with this team? What are you freaking doing? Logan Ryan, he's a veteran on this team. Yeah. How could you cut him? Calm down. Take a deep breath. Yeah. It's going to be okay. Logan Ryan is still going to be on this football team. It was just a nice move by the Bucs, maneuvering things, because all they had to do was release him. He doesn't go on the waiver wire. He didn't have any guaranteed money, so this doesn't hurt the Bucs.
Right.
They made Logan Ryan aware of it. It's not like this was out of the blue. And he's like,
yeah. I mean, they cut him. Technically, you're not allowed to make these types of deals. And I'm not saying this is one of those types of deals, but you're not allowed to make a deal with a player to circumvent the league's roster maneuvers, like they're doing. But this does happen around the league where certain players, veterans who are not subject to the waiver wire, that's very important, they are released. And then it's like, we hope that you'll come back maybe as soon as tomorrow. We'd love to maybe re-sign you at a later date, hence tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, the players back. So that happens around the league. Happened with AQ Shipley, I think last year.
Yep.
The year before. Yeah. So
yeah, it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years.
Yeah,
so
he got injured the Super Bowl season where his
right.
career was
So
done.
that happens, and that's what's happening here in this instance. So I know it was a shock, because when I got wind of it, I was like, wow, this is kind of a big name, but he will be back.
Yeah, so no worries there. But I remember too, as soon as I heard the news, I was like, but why? But why? But it makes sense. Making sure you get Ryan Jensen back onto the team, so then you could keeping Ryan Jensen on the team so you could put him on IR. That was funny, because that was one of those positions where we talked about maybe the Bucs do that with Giovanni Bernard, because he would be a candidate, veteran guy, probably could get him back again if another team doesn't pick him up. So therefore, but they decided to go with Logan Ryan. At the end of the day, it's all going to work out. It's all part of the plan, as they say.
Exactly. Mark Fisher, we appreciate your contribution, your donation. For a practice squad, is it 2 days or exactly 40 hours they have to wait? They actually have to wait 1 day, right? Isn't it tomorrow they can start assembling the practice squad?
Yeah.
At 4 o'clock, yeah. So, or no, I think it's noon. It's noon tomorrow that they can, I'm having an old man brain fart here. It's either 4 o'clock or noon tomorrow, but it's tomorrow they can start assembling their practice squad for the year. And they'll do that. They've already reached out to some players and said, we want you back, unless a team claims them off waivers, which can happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. Can you think of any of these rookies that are going to get picked up off the waiver wire? I mean, I just can't. I don't know that anybody has done anything to distinguish themselves in the preseason games that's going to make a team want to, maybe Andre Anthony, because he has 2 sacks and he went to LSU and he was a 7th round pick. But any of these undrafted free agents, I can't see that happen.
Yeah, it's just you go around the league, you say it all the time. We have such tunnel vision on the Bucs. I don't necessarily know what the Seattle Seahawks need on their defense right now.
Yeah,
or,
I agree.
Whatever it may be. So, I would think okay, maybe Nolan Turner. He's a guy played at a big school like Clemson. People have heard of him before, but I don't necessarily know if there's a team out there that really needs a ton of safety help right now.
Yeah.
So,
and the thing too is again, it's not like you pick up a guy off waivers and you put him on your practice squad. He goes on your roster. He's one of 53. So you have to make room for him. So whether it's an Andre Anthony, whether it's a Nolan Turner, I just don't see it happening. I don't think there's anybody that's distinguished themselves enough with preseason tape to where you're going to say we're going to put this guy on our 53.
That's why it was a big surprise. Last year when Tanner Hudson got picked up by the 49ers, it was whoa, we didn't really.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Tanner Hudson, at least he led the league in preseason.
Yeah.
Yards, catches, and touchdowns, things like that. So, that is thunder. Did you hear that, Ben? I got thunder here in Wesley Chapel.
I did. Yeah, I heard it the first time. And I was that might be thunder, maybe just something else. But
it's the typical 4:30 Wesley Chapel thunderstorm right during the podcast. So hopefully we won't lose power. It has not happened yet. So now I just checked myself, and it will happen. So
it's all right. I'll do a one-man show. It'll be all good. It'll be a lot of fun. Matthew also points out that OJ Howard was cut today by the Bills, but I believe that was another situation kind of similar to Logan Ryan, where they're just cutting him for now and then going to bring him back onto the roster. But obviously, Bucs alumni that, again, still gets the people going. People get fired up one way or another about OJ Howard. So I felt it was a little important to bring that up. Yeah,
no, I agree. Let's see. In terms of any of the roster cuts, did any other cuts surprise you? I can't think of anyone other than Tyler Johnson really that truly surprised me. I mean, I wouldn't have been shocked if Deven Thompkins would have made the roster, but the fact that they released him doesn't surprise me. But Tyler Johnson is probably the biggest name. Hope there's no tornado coming. Wow. But I can't think of any other that surprised. I know JC might be shocked to see Jose Borregales.
Right. After 2 missed kicks, but
probably not.
I would say Jannard Avery was a little surprising just for the fact that he was barely here.
Yeah.
It's you just signed this guy. You're going to have him play for 2 practices and then be done. It's like the the Grandpa Simpson meme when he like walks into the place, puts his hat down and coat, and then puts it back on and immediately walks out. It's kind of
pretty much what he did, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, he does seem like a prime practice squad candidate, but we did go from, and I remember talking to Pewter Report alumni. Well, John Ledyard, he put it in our group chat and everything, and he was saying that he had the Steelers had Avery as a number 3 outside linebacker. So we're talking about getting a number 3 outside linebacker that's now potentially number 5 after Anthony Nelson and Carl Nassib, but has the potential to be a number 3. That I found a little bit surprising, especially because he can do some special teams work as well. But at the end of the day, if he gets onto the practice squad, it all works out.
And they usually keep 2 outside linebackers, and I wonder if they keep Andre Anthony and Gennard Avery.
Yeah,
because again, it's not just about pass rushers. You want these guys because those outside linebackers, that's a key body type for special teams, right? Your running backs, tight ends, safeties, and outside linebackers. Those are the prototype body types to run down, cover kicks, cover punts, do some punt protection, and then still run down and cover. That's why you can't have guards and centers out there on your punt team blocking for the punter, because those guys have got to block for a second or two, then release and run 40 yards downfield and go cover a punt. So that's where body types like Andre Anthony, who you see here, and then Gennard Avery come into play. I will say, just for my own selfish reasons, I would love to see Willington Prevalon make the practice squad. His name is just so fun to say.
Oh, it'd be one of the most glorious of days if Willington Prevalon could make his way back to Tampa Bay. If no one else picks him up on the waiver wire, we'd love to see Lord Willington back in the red and pewter.
Cheerio! Yes, we would. It'd be splendid. And of course, if he was on the practice squad, we'd have to find a way to get him on the Pewter Report podcast, and then do the entire interview in like ridiculous British accents.
Yeah,
just to like see the look in his face when he's like, "What the?"
Yeah, he'd probably sign off like right away. Did you see the video of the Titans GM when he was on TV?
John Robinson?
Yeah.
No.
He was on. It was like the Titans' last preseason game, and it was very similar to like how Jason Light went on with Rondé, and so like they're doing an interview, or whatever.
So Jason stealing that idea, or John stealing that idea from Jason. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, but so they're like doing the interview, and then the Titans like allow a touchdown, or whatever, and they're kicking the extra point, and he's just like midway through the interview, he's like, "All right, guys, the team hasn't scored once I've been on here, so I'm out. Peace." And he just takes off his headset and leaves. And it was Charles Robinson, I believe, was one of the broadcasters. Yeah.
I saw Charles in Nashville. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was just like, wow, this hasn't really happened too often. It was a very odd situation.
Yeah. It's funny because Charles he comes to Bucs practice for training camp. He lives just down the road in Orlando.
Yeah.
And he does college football and NFL now and all this. And so he's one of those guys that gets hired like Rondé Barber to do the preseason games for the teams. And so he was a Tennessee volunteer.
He was
big time cornerback, I believe, for them way back in the day, because Charles is about my age. And so I saw him and I said, "Charles, what are you doing here?" He's like, "Shh, don't tell any of your Florida people. I'm doing the Titans broadcast." I said, but he's a good guy, friend of Pewter Report. We've leaned on him for some quotes from time to time.
Yeah.
Like nice. Charles Davis, good guy.
Yep. Yeah, very nice. So Scott, the Bucs still have a practice squad to figure out, but when you go through all of these roster cuts, and I'm sure it wasn't easy for Jason Light to to make one decision over the other. So I imagine he's like a little exhausted right now, just like, oh man, like I just had to cut a number of different players, and I don't know. Sometimes after a long day, it's just kind of nice to like sit back, relax, and just like crack open a beer, kind of just chill out a little bit.
Yeah, maybe a Pirate Republic.
I think a Pirate Republic would be the perfect beer to crack open and chill out.
Pirate Republic, folks, is the official beer of Pewter Report. That's right. We have our own beer. How cool is that? Now, we don't brew it. We just drink it, and we just promote it. And the reason why we do this And I'll share this with you. We have, for the last couple of years, you can even ask my staff, we've tried to find an official beer of Pewter Report. We have not found the right fit. And honestly, there have been a couple of companies that have approached us about doing this, and I've had to actually turn them down because the quality just wasn't there. 6-pack to 6-pack, keg to keg, whatever it may be, the quality control was just not there. And we also wanted to get more of a local beer rather than, some national brand name beer that's generic. I'm not going to name any names. But Pirate Republic is just the perfect fit. It's brewed out of the Nassau, Bahamas. Folks have actually been there to the tap room. Ashley and I went down there a couple of years ago. So it's funny how fate works. We actually had some beer in the Nassau, Bahamas tap room at Pirate Republic. And a couple of years later, they become the official beer of Pewter Report. Why? Because they live a pirate lifestyle just like you all. And they have 3 fantastic beers that are now available in the Tampa Bay area and spreading across the state of Florida. The can I just held up was the Long John Pilsner. They've also got a Take No Quarter IPA, which I am not an IPA drinker, and I love that IPA. It is absolutely the only IPA I will drink. And the Golden Haze of Piracy Belgian wheat beer is also fantastic. Folks, you slice an orange, drop it in there, and it's fantastic. It's a great beer. But I'm going to spend some time today talking about the Long John Pilsner. 4.5% ABV. It packs a nice little punch. It's their lightest beer, crisp and refreshing, and it's got some tremendous hops to give it a little bit of the spicy aroma, but it's not too hoppy like you're going to find with their IPA. And the toasted Munich malt really brings out the depth. What I like about this Long John Pilsner is it's the most crushable beer they have. What I mean by that is this is the kind of beer when it's still hot and humid out in Florida and you're going to the beach, you're laying out by the pool. This is the kind of beer that's light, crisp, and refreshing. And this is the one that you want to put in your cooler. And also for tailgating too. If you're looking for the perfect tailgating beer to take to the stadium, whether it's college or pro games, this is the beer because you can have multiple Long John Pilsners and not feel full, but you get that great taste and you get that pirate essence, right? That's what I like to call it. So live life on your own terms. Drink like a pirate. Drink Pirate Republic. Now you're probably asking, where can you find Pirate Republic? Well, I'll tell you. At participating Total Wine and More, Lucan's Liquors, ABC Liquors, and Party Liquors in and around the Tampa Bay area. If your favorite liquor store or your favorite bar doesn't have Pirate Republic, ask for it. Tell them to get it on draft, get it in cans, get it on tap, and spread the word about Pirate Republic. If you haven't tasted it yet, highly recommend you doing so. They're actually going to be the official sponsor of the Pewter Report Bowling League, Matt, at Pin Chasers this year. And so if you want to come out and bowl with us and join our bowling league, we're going to have Pirate Republic beer available for our bowling nights at Pin Chasers.
That is correct. Very excited about that, having a dual sponsor combo going on there with Pin Chasers and Pirate Republic. The Long John Pilsner is my personal favorite, so I'm glad we highlighted that one today.
Yes.
I am a huge fan of that one. Scott, now that we've had a lot of the roster cuts, the practice squad is obviously coming up next, but also the Bucs are going to be monitoring the waiver wire. Todd Bowles said that, as every team is. It does seem like that if they were going to take any type of position off of the waiver wire, I think it has to be offensive line.
I agree.
Just based on all the injuries that went on and, how I know they feel confident in-house. I don't know if I feel totally confident in the interior depth, but I think that would definitely be the position to go with.
Yeah, I agree. And there's going to be some names out there on the waiver wire. There's also going to be some names that will be available via trade too. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Buccaneers do add an offensive lineman. Haven't really spent as much time looking at that group today. We'll kind of get into that probably for tomorrow. We've been kind of consumed with the Buccaneers' own roster cuts and breaking some news today about Logan Ryan and the Bucs keeping 7 receivers. But that's something that we'll investigate. I do think too that the fact that John Molchan was released, and maybe he goes back on the practice squad, Matt, maybe that's a player that they put on there. But the fact that they're not keeping him on the 53 right now, and maybe I'm wrong, and they end up making another roster move later in the week, but it tells me that there's good news with regards to Robert Hainsey's ankle and Nick Leverett's shoulder. And I know that we reported some good news from Todd Bowles, but it might be even more encouraging now, 24, 48 hours after the fact, that you don't need to keep John Molchon on this roster because they feel good enough for Dallas, right? That both of those guys should be good enough to play.
That's, of course, going to be one of the first things we monitor. We will be back at the facility tomorrow and Thursday before the Bucs have the weekend off, and they'll be back on Monday as well. But that's one of the first things we're going to be looking at, of course, is Hainsey out there? Is Leverett out there? I'm not going to guess yet, but I would imagine they're probably taking it easy, considering it's, there's no game this week and they still have 12 days to get ready for the season. But that, of course, is going to be one of the top priorities going to practice tomorrow. I do think Molchon probably is a candidate for the practice squad, just because, outside of Leverett as a backup center, who's also going to be a backup guard, there's not a ton of center options right now. And then, of course, that goes back to what you said about, the different trades or, the waiver wire going on. But in terms of like on the roster right now, I think you have to keep Molchon, because if it turns out that the injury is worse than we kind of expected, well, what are you going to do from there? So I do think Molchon makes it.
You think he's in 53 or on the practice squad?
Practice squad.
Okay, yeah.
I think just like insurance policy, making sure.
He's got some rapport with the quarterbacks. The other thing that is interesting, we'll have to kind of probe Todd Bowles about, is we've already seen Robert Hainsey and Nick Leverett go down in the same game. That happened in a preseason game against the Colts in that preseason finale on Saturday. What were to happen if both of those players were to go down again against the Dallas Cowboys or another game? Who would be the third string center? What I mean by that is on the active roster, on the 46, who could step in and snap? And I just wonder who that player is.
No, it's a
worth
good question.
Figuring out, right? It's something the Bucs have to look at.
It's so tough. I mean, we talk about how certain players are, extremely tough, or they never get injured, and other guys, like, they get injured so much. But especially with the offensive line, sometimes you can't help yourself. You could block a guy, you could do your job, block a guy 5 yards down the field, and then one person's diving after the runner and just lands on the back of your knee or the back of your ankle, and you're screwed. There's like literally nothing that you can do about it. So yeah, it sucked in that situation, especially the way that Hainsey got hurt. But it is a good question. Like, who would be the third string center? It reminds me very much, Scott, of the Bears game, not last season, but the game when Brady forgot that it was fourth down. If we remember that game, it was a Thursday night game. So the Bucs were extremely limited at the running back position. Like, Leonard Fournette was dressed, but he was so injured that he couldn't even play. So there was talks of like Devin White being an emergency running back if it came down to that situation where everyone was hurt. Now, I'm not saying they're going to take like Rashad White and make him a center. That would never happen. But I'm curious who could be the
we'll have to ask emergency that tomorrow, because listen, you got spoiled with Ryan Jensen, who was an absolute Iron Man. Even when the dude's hip was hurting tremendously, he still was out there, and he did not want to miss any playing time. And Tom Brady was very thankful for it. We have seen that, the Hainsey, I don't want to say he's injury prone, because it's not his fault that he had the leg rolled up on in Indianapolis, but he left that game injured. He also left practice injured due to dehydration, that joint practice against the Dolphins. It just bears repeating. Sometimes offensive linemen, I've seen it here in my nearly 3 decades, sometimes you get a guy that's just like glass. I remember Ross Hochstein was one of those guys. He just couldn't stay healthy. Now, he went on to the Patriots and was healthier there, but he could not catch a break in Tampa. And so I just hope that Hainsey is a durable player that can go in there and go wire to wire at center until Ryan Jensen gets back. But if he gets hurt and Nick Leverett gets hurt, I'm curious as to know, out of the offensive linemen, who is the next guy on game day on that 46-man roster? Who slides over there and snaps the ball? Not an easy thing to do. And I'm sure that there have been some players that have done some cross training, but is it Shaq Mason? Is it Gedeke? I don't think it's Gedeke. He's a rookie, but
he's got enough to focus on going from tackle to guard.
Yeah, I remember that was one of the things with Aaron Stinney that kind of had him on the bubble this year. Is that Stinney was not a snapper. He was strictly a guard. Really couldn't play tackle, and that was a situation where his roster spot was a little tenuous because of the lack of versatility. I know Fred Johnson can play guard and tackle. Maybe it's Brandon Walton. Maybe Walton's the guy. We'll have to find out tomorrow when we talk to Todd Bowles.
Yeah, we will figure that out because that would significantly change the game. You hope it doesn't get to that type of situation. But one game that kind of stays the same the whole time is bowling. And the best place to go bowling is at Pin Chasers, which, of course, another sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. You heard us talk about it before. We're bringing Pirate Republic in, and they will be involved in the Pewter Report Bowling League that is coming up sooner rather than later. So keep your eyes and ears out for that. But Pin Chasers has so many different locations, as you see on the screen there. And even more than that, they have so many deals, whether it's all you can eat pizza, all you can bowl, dollar beers, and the food is extremely underrated, from the pizza to the nachos to the chicken tenders. You will not be disappointed. It's not just going out for bowling. It's a legit fun night out with friends and family. You can book your child's birthday party there. They got the arcade room, so you can do a little bowling, little video games. Everyone has fun there. And like I said, just so many different deals going on. And it's really hot right now. They blast that AC. So if you want to stay inside and stay cool and only be out in the sun for a limited amount of time, head on over to Pin Chasers because they got you covered there with the deals and with what they have to offer. So go to pinchasers.net to reserve a lane or book a party. That is pinchasers.net.
Yep. A couple of house cleaning duties for us. We want to make sure that we tell you to visit pewterreport.com for the latest Bucs news. And we've had a lot of it today. We'll have even more tomorrow as they assemble their practice squad. So visit pewterreport.com for the latest Bucs news. We appreciate everybody that's helping us get to over 9,100. That's right. We're getting closer and closer to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. We greatly appreciate that. Thank you, Pewter people. We love you. Subscribe to Pewter Report TV on our YouTube channel. Hit the like button on our videos. The cool thing, too, is once you hit subscribe, and it's free. I know they use the word subscribe, but it's absolutely free. Click on the notifications button. That way, whenever we do a podcast that's not at this normal 4 o'clock time during the week, you'll be notified when that is. Sometimes during the off season and during the season, we'll do podcasts later at night, or we'll do an emergency podcast if there's breaking news. And so then you'll be notified of that. So make sure you subscribe, then click notifications when you join us at Pewter Report TV on YouTube.
And of course, want to remind everyone that we are going to have our Pewter Report Underdog Fantasy Leagues coming up very soon. So if you want to play against us, if you want to play against Scott or me or JC or anyone else from pewterreport.com, make sure that you email us at Scott at sr@pewterreport.com. If you want to play against me and we can bet on, do a side bet as well, you can hit me up at matt@pewterreport.com. But make sure if you're playing at Underdog Fantasy that you sign up using the promo code Pewter. They obviously got Best Ball Mania 3 going on right now, and they have the pick'ems and over-unders for the season. I mean, you could do it in any sport, but it's even better in football season.
I love, don't get me wrong, I love the Best Ball Mania. I do, right? That's what they specialize in. I love the fantasy football leagues, and I said I was going to do a draft tomorrow night and also next Wednesday. I'm actually doing all of my drafts next Wednesday night. I've gotten emails from about a dozen Buccaneer fans. So if you've emailed me, I've received it. I'm going to reply, but we're going to be doing it next Wednesday. I'm going out of town. Thursday, I'm going to Manhattan, Kansas, to see Kansas State, their season opener against South Dakota. Haven't been to a K-State football game in a while. My daughter Ellie lives out there, and we're heading out there for that. So next Wednesday is when we'll be doing our Underdog Fantasy mock drafts for me. Matt, you can do yours whenever you want. But if you've emailed me, I got your email, and we'll go ahead and get going with that. Matt, you're getting an awful lot of comments here. I got some comments about my hair, which I greatly appreciate. You're getting some comments about your mustache.
Yeah, Dr. Nick has been saying that multiple times.
I know.
I think he's mocking me, but that's fine.
I don't think so.
If you actually want to show your face, Dr. Nick, go ahead. But it doesn't sound like you will. So if you want to come at me for my facial look, let's see how you look, buddy.
I think it's a legitimate compliment, is it not?
I don't know. I mean, there's 4 crying emojis next to it, so
Well,
I don't know.
yeah.
I just think if you're gonna make fun of someone's look, then you got to show your face as well.
If it's 4 crying emojis, that means it's envy. Okay, that's the thing. Just like I'm envious of Blaine Gabbert's hair.
All right, fair enough.
I've gotten plenty of compliments about my hair, which is awesome. Greatly appreciate that. But I do understand it pales in comparison to Blaine Gabbert's. Just look at that mullet; it's just sensational.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's no beating Blaine, so the best compliment you can get is being in the same category as him. So,
I agree.
Yeah, I'm just having fun. I'm just There's no real beef. I just if you want to talk, if you want to make fun of me, I'm gonna make fun of you back. That's
that's the New Yorker in you coming out.
Yeah, I mean that's just it's as simple as that. So put up your own picture and then we can actually talk.
Yeah, but, Matt's gonna be like having a bat, like just getting it ready. Okay, let's go. You want to piss at me? All right.
Shout out Nate Pitts. He's had some funny comments today, but the last one he just had was oh wait, no, that wasn't it. Nate had one about he's envious of Ryan Griffin's career and pay.
Yeah,
I don't blame him. Ryan Griffin's had the best career of all time.
Yeah,
so shout out to him.
Yeah, I want that job for sure.
All right, I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Tomorrow we'll be back at 4:00. We'll be at the facility during the day, and of course, talk to Todd Bowles, a couple of the players.
Tomorrow we get to go back inside the locker room for the first time since 2019. Isn't that crazy?
It is kind of wild.
Inside the Bucs locker room.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's been a long time since we've actually been in the locker room. We usually just get the players off of the field now, but we're going to be back in the locker room tomorrow. It's going to be awesome, and then we're going to be on here at 4:00 to be with all the awesome Pewter people. So for Scott Reynolds. Guys. I'm Matt Matera saying thank you, everyone, for watching and listening, and we will see you tomorrow for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.